Hey guys, Julian here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make funky disco house like Purple Disco Machine. As usual, you can get the full project file and samples and MIDI presets. Everything from this video is available right at the top of the description for just $5 on my Bandcamp. This is a great way to support me if you guys are enjoying these videos, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. And yeah, let's get going. So we're at 124 BPM. The first sound here is this guitar. So the way this was made was I just played this in myself. You can see it's an audio file. I quantized it a little bit. You know, a lot of times, like, when you record stuff, it's always good to go in and just get everything perfect. It's not, like, perfectly on the grid, like you can see. There's still some little discrepancies I left to make it feel real like that. And, like, you can see I recorded a bunch of other stuff back there, too. There's, like, that little 16th note, which is a little bit off. But, yeah, I've just got that in there. And then we have it going through some effects. So the first thing here is actually it's being compressed. So the point of this isn't really to like flatten the sound, the final sound out so much. As you can hear, it's still a pretty dynamic sound. But what this is doing is it's flattening out the response going into the amp. If I turn this off, see how some of the notes are a little bit sharper than the other ones? But then if we turn this on, the attack of the notes feels very even. And you can also hear this just makes the sound a bit fatter. So that's what this is doing. It's just helping to kind of even out the response of the guitar going into all the effects. Then we have this phaser and this chorus. So here's without these. Then with the phaser. And then with the chorus. So these just give it some modulation and help it to have that cool kind of like vibey sort of disco guitar sound. I also have this echo after that, which is just doing this really fast delay. There's without that. And then with it, so you can hear, that gives it a little bit more space. And then we have the amp, which is this amp and this cabinet here. So the way a guitar amp usually works, like with a real guitar amp, is you would have the amp, what's called the head, and then the cabinet, which is where the speaker is. So the head is all the controls, the cabinet is the speaker. That's what this recreates. We have our amp head here, and then it's very realistically going through a cabinet there so that we get a really similar, like a really realistic simulation of how a guitar amp would be working. So I have this on here, it's just on the clean setting, and then the cabinet is on this setting, just to get this kind of fat, nice guitar tone. And then finally I just have a bit of drum bus to give this a little bit more fatness. Here's without it, and then with it. And yeah, that's it for the guitar. After that we have this house piano, which sounds like this. So this is just playing our chord progression. The chords here are just B minor, and then we go up to D major, and then down to F sharp minor, to G major, and then an A major, and then we go back to B minor. So yeah, it's a pretty simple chord progression. You know, this is the kind of chord progression you would hear in a lot of these tracks. It's almost like a little bit more poppy, but then it's being played by this very like disco sounding track. So that's the idea here, is you want a poppy chord progression with the disco track. And then the other thing I'll say here is like the way I voice the chords. These are all just regular major and minor triads, as you can see, like that. And then I've just taken the root note, so this note, and then the fifth, this note in each chord, and just doubled those up down below an octave. And you can hear that just fills it out a bit. And then for the sound with this one, it's just this sample. This is just the Korg M1 piano. It's the famous house piano. And then I've just got this going through a bit of chorus and a bit of reverb to give it some space and some atmosphere. Then we have a bit of drum bus to make it kind of hit a bit more. Here's without that. And then with it. This makes a big difference because usually, like, when you hear these kinds of pianos, like if you just have the dry piano, it just sounds a little bit too thin. But then when you add that like real fat drum bus on there, it really gives it the body it needs. Where it's now kind of like filling out that low mid-range in the track and not just like the highs. And then finally, we just have a high pass filter to cut out some lows and make sure that nothing is going to be clashing with the rest of the mix. And yeah, that's it for the piano. After that, we have the string stabs, which sound like this. So these are just these individual audio samples. There's sort of two different types of them here. So there's this standard one that you hear in a lot of tracks where it goes like that, kind of like the string fall. So we have that, but then there's also like these little sampled parts here where you're not just getting like a woo, like one note, but it's giving you kind of some vibe because you're getting these little riffs. You know, that's the kind of stuff that you're gonna hum along with the track and that you're really gonna remember afterwards. So yeah, just grabbing these little sample like string stabs like this is a good way to add some vibe to your track. And then also like this one, you know, that's the famous one that you hear in a lot of tracks, just getting that sample, which if you want this one, link is right at the top of the description. But for the effects on these, they're pretty simple. You know, it's pretty much like with these first two ones, you can see it's just a bit of reverb, a bit of drum bus to fatten them up, and also to bring out the reverb, and then just a compressor that side chains it to the kick, and a high pass filter to cut out the lows. And then on the second one, you can see it's really similar. It's just reverb. I've got a bit of saturation on this one as well, which is just making it fatter. Then we have a high pass filter, a compressor side chaining it to the kick, and then an EQ, which you can hear. It's just boosting the highs a little bit. And yeah, that is it for the string stabs. From there we have this brass stab, which sounds like this. Promise I don't have coronavirus. But what this is doing is it's actually playing literally just the same MIDI as the piano, but it's just like those two chords that. So this is meant to kind of be like call and response with the string stabs, because we have the strings. And then this little bow, that's just the brass. But it's just a little stab, just like the ones with the strings, where it's just playing a little melodic thing. And then it disappears. And yeah, so that's definitely how I'd recommend doing this. Like, when you go down to that chord there, having the brass play that rather than having just like another string riff or something like that. Because we're kind of letting the track breathe. It's like it allows you to still hear everything that's going on, but it's also clear that there's something new happening there to keep the track exciting. And for the sound with this one, it's just this brass ensemble. I'm using the sforzando. So it'll be like, and kind of build up like that. That's what we're doing with that. And then I've got a bit of drum bus on it, and then a high pass filter just to cut out the low end. And yeah, then that is it for the brass. From there we have the bass line, which sounds like this. So this bass line seems pretty complicated. It's actually pretty simple. The way it's made is it's just following the chord progression. Like if I play this with the piano, you can hear that really clearly. Matter of fact, I'll pitch up the bass so you can really hear it. So that's all it's doing. It's just this like really simple sort of boom doo boom doo doo type of rhythm. And the way we're making that boom doo, where it like goes up like that, is it's literally just jumping between different notes and their octaves. That's the secret to these type of bass lines like you hear in a lot of these tracks, not just from Purple Disco Machine, but from a ton of these types of producers. But yeah, you just like you have your chords, and then you just start writing in like boom doo boom doo, where it's bouncing from the different octaves. And then the other voices in here that aren't just octaves are really simple too. Like for example, this one, where it goes do 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 like that. All that note is just two semitone sounds. So like it's really not that hard once you define your chord progression. I would recommend writing out the chord progression first. You know, figure out a chord progression, figure out musically how the track is going to be, then you write this bass line. It doesn't start with the bass line. And yeah, for the sound with this one, it's made using operators. So it's just an FM sound. You can see we have these all four of the oscillators on, or the operators, I guess as you would call them. The first one is on the saw 4, so that just, I was finding, helps to give it a little bit more of that, like, real live finger bass type of sound. That's what I was going for with this, is I wanted it to sound like a live bass, but made with FM synthesis. And as you can hear, it's not hard to do that. You know, it really gets that vibe pretty easily. So yeah, we just have the saw wave, the saw 4, and then just these 3 sine waves here. You know, pretty simple. Playing with the phases a little bit on some of them. And then I have this FM algorithm, which is this one. So this just chooses like how the oscillators are going to modulate each other. And if I put it on, this is the default setting. You can see it's not quite the same. But this is the secret, is setting it on this setting. And yeah, then after that, it's just a bit of drum bus to fatten the whole thing up and kind of help to even it out. I find this helps to flatten it, not in a compression way, but in a way where it's just evening out that bass response. Then we have an EQ, just cutting some room for the kick and kind of focusing the sound. And then finally, I just have a compressor, which is side chaining this to the kick. Then we have the kick, which is really simple. You know, with this style, you just want like this big, fat, deep kick like this. Just like, just super like hard in the low end. It's not even got the fattest, like, you know, it's not like a super clicky transient, but it's filling out that low end really well. And the transients of this kick still is pretty hard, as you can see here. And yeah, so I've got that kick that I made, and then we just have a bit of EQ. Just boosting the lows a tiny bit, just kind of bring it out in the sound. And then we have a saturator, just to make it hit a bit more. And you can hear what that's doing. It really gives it that punch. It makes it a little bit crunchier, but you're not really going to hear that in the track. Like, even if we are just playing the drums, like if I turn off all these other elements, you know, that crunchiness in the kick isn't like, you're not going to be like, oh, the kick is too crunchy now. Like, it totally works fine. But yeah, that's just fattening it up. And then on the group of the kick and bass, I just have a bit of saturation as well. So this really isn't doing a whole lot. You could maybe get away with not having it on there, but it just gives an extra layer of fullness to the low end. So here it is with no group processing. And then with it. So you can really hear how it's like making things a little bit crunchier, but again, you're not really going to hear that in the track. And then what it's doing is now it's filling in that space to where the bass is kind of in a more even place with the kick, and it feels just a lot fuller. Versus without it, the bass is not quite in the same place. And yeah, that's it for the lows. And then the last thing that we have here is the percussion, which, as you can see, is just all in its own group. And I'll just kind of break it down from like the most important things down to the more sort of background elements. So the first thing that you probably notice here would be the hi-hats. So the way this is being done is it's just a closed hi-hat, just like a just playing straight eighth notes. In this style, you could have the hi-hat kind of be like, but usually you would just have it going just throughout the track like that. And then this open hi-hat, which hits just every 2 bars, just once, and it just goes. And listen to what happens if I take that out of the mix. It's missing like that blast of high end. You know, this hi-hat is almost like an effect, the way that it's fitting into the track, just having it go at the start of every 2 bars. Like, just to have a blast of high end there is giving it a lot of energy. And that's the way I think of this. It's like how it's just giving us that every 2 bars. Then after the hi-hats, we have the shaker. And this is just a loop of a shaker, but what's happening is it plays really nicely off of that main hi-hat. So the main hi-hat on its own is just going tss, 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 tss. But now when we add in the shaker, we're getting chicka, chicka, chicka. And it really helps it to stand out in the mix too. Like, this is something you need to keep in mind if you have a shaker, is like not just having a shaker just to have it, but having something that you'll actually be able to hear amongst all these different things in the mix. And you can hear this fits nicely into the mix for that purpose. The next thing we have after that is this clap snare, as I called it, which sounds like this. And what this is it's really simple. It's just a snare. You know, more of your standard sort of like disco snare, being layered with a clap, and then you put them together, and you get the from the snare with the from the clap, and you get a really punchy hit. It just sits nicely on the 2 and 4 there. And yeah, and then the last layers here, also on that, I just have a bit of drum bus to kind of glue them together. But then on the last layers here for the percussion, we just have all these different little sort of like background sounds, which it's 4 of them. It's a cowbell, it's the breath sound, the bongo sound, and then this little snare, and they all sound like this. So yeah, you can hear, you know, it's pretty simple stuff. Like, this is all stuff that you probably already have on your hard drive, these types of samples. But just adding in, like, these different little background sounds, like the cowbell doing the or having a breath that just comes every bar. You know, just having that that you can count on every time actually is making a big difference. Or like having this bongo even, which is more of a background element, but you hear how that plays off of the cowbell. And then the snare at the end as well. So like, just having all these different little extra things happening is really adding a lot to the track. And this is the stuff that you're hearing that's making you kind of think like, okay, this sounds professional, like this sounds like a track. It's all these little background sounds that you may not always notice. And also, something I'll talk about with these really quick, it's just making them all fit together too. Like, if you listen to these, when you play them on their own, it kind of has its own rhythm. And yeah, you just want to make sure like they're all working toward the same goal, rather than having them all playing, you know, at the same time and overlapping each other, or just having like too much going on is bad. But if you keep it really clean and focused like this, it'll sound really good, and you know, everything will fit together. And then on the group of all that percussion, all we have is just a little bit of drum bass. But here's without it, and then with it. So you can hear this really, really, really brings out the hi-hats and the shakers and just everything. It makes it all really like hit in an even way, while also just bringing out all the fullness and really making everything feel close together. And yeah. So, that's me for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project file and samples and MIDI and presets. Everything from this video is available for just $5 right at the top of the description on my Bandcamp. It's a great way to support me if you guys have been enjoying these videos. You know, I don't make a whole lot off of these videos, but with these sample packs and different stuff like this, I'm able to keep making more great tutorial videos for you guys every day. And yeah, so that's me for this one. Thank you very much, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.